How's it going? This is Dylan with Dylan Talks Tone, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of a controversial subject. It's a little bit on the next level of guitar setup, and that is using a neck shim in the bolt-on neck of a Fender style guitar. Okay, so first of all, and most people are going to just jump right out and say, well, you shouldn't have to use a neck shim if it's a good quality build. If it needs a neck shim, it's a low quality guitar, there's a problem, it's mismatched parts, it's whatever. Well, I cry foul on that because Leo Fender designed the guitar to have shims. Okay, so early Telecasters had them in there. I've worked on a lot of early 60s to late 60s Telecasters and all the way till about 69 or so. You see these cardboard shims, like a piece of cereal box material, that sort of thing in there. And then in the 70s and early 80s, they went to something completely different. Let me show you. This is a 1985 Stratocaster with a micro tilt adjuster. There was a little hole in here with a little Allen key in there, or an Allen bolt in there that you could adjust. You could loosen these screws and then put some neck angle into the guitar and be able to adjust it. So even Fender knew that in some situations you're gonna need to adjust the neck angle on the guitar. Now we know that most Gibson guitars have like a 3 to 4 degree neck angle depending on the model. And this is because the bridge and everything sits above the body. Now, on a Telecaster, they don't. Well, they still do, but they don't sit as high. And so most people say, well, because the distance from the bottom of the neck pocket to the top of the fretboard is set up properly, and if that's set up properly and all your parts are matched properly, then you don't need to worry about it because it's the proper setup and everything can be flat across there and everything's fine. But if you have to think about this for a second. This bridge, now not this particular one, but we'll talk about, let's just say any Telecaster. This bridge, this body can be paired up with any number of necks. And over the years, they were paired up with any number of necks, okay? So here's something you got to remember, and we kind of overlook this, but when we're talking about the string height, we're talking about the working string height can change. So the string height basically would stay the same coming across here, but the distance from the bottom of the neck pocket to where the top of the fretboard is can change for parts of the fretboard. If we have a 12-inch radius fretboard, it's higher on the edges of the fretboard than if we have a 7¼ inch radius. There's more of a gap here if the center is relatively the same. Also, depending on the fretboard material, like this is a one-piece maple neck, okay, versus like a slab board rosewood. The thicknesses can be a little bit different. The size of the fret, if everything is exactly the same except for the size of the fret, we don't think about that. But when the note is fretted, the distance from the fretted note to the bottom of the neck pocket is different if the frets are higher or lower. Okay, so this means that there can be a difference in gap here, no matter what our truss rod is doing, and a lot of times affected by how our saddles are set up. So sometimes we may realize that we need to put a shim into a Telecaster or a Stratocaster style guitar. Now, the next thing people are going to say is, well, if you put a shim in a Fender style guitar, then there goes your tone because you're putting a gap in there and the wood's not going to be 100% against each other and the thing's not going to sound right. I will tell you right now that the amount of effect that it has on your tone is whether you know there's a shim in there or not. And the reason is because you can't really measure it, okay? And you could say, well, I can tell a difference. Well, can you really? Number one. And number two, I'm going to show you why we spend way too much time worrying about this. Okay? Because then the next question is how to do it properly. If you're going to put a shim in there, how are you going to do it properly? Well, what we use here is we use a 0.3 millimeter piece of carbon fiber, and we put it in the bottom of the neck pocket right here. I use carbon fiber mostly because I have it. And I use it, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you. I use it because if I were to use a piece of a cereal box, the internet wouldn't like it. Truth be told, it does not matter. And I'm going to show you why in a minute. There are going to be people that are going to be jumping through the computer screen or whatever you're watching this on right now saying, if you use a paper product, it's going to expand and contract, and it's going to squish, and it's going to do all this stuff, and my guitar is going to move all over the place, and they're going to be drama queens about it, and they're going to make it sound like it's going to move all over the place. The tolerances for this are so tight, and the materials are so thin, and they're both cellulose materials, the body and the shim, that they do not move enough to make any difference whatsoever. Fender has been using a cellulose type shim since the Telecaster came into existence. Taylor Guitars has been using a cellulose type shim in their acoustic guitars ever since the beginning. And you never ever hear about somebody saying that shim in my guitar expanded and screwed up how my guitar is playing. The other thing about it is that people say, well, you're not going to get even pressure from here to here, and the tone's not going to be as good, and when I tighten it down, I'm going to squish it. Well, I knew that this is going to be a question. So I did an experiment with this body and with the neck. I took Plastigage. You know, Plastigage is a wax, okay? And it comes in very, very, very small strands, and what it's really used for is you put it in between two machined surfaces. This is a CNC cut body. It's 0.03 of an inch tolerance from here to here. This is completely flat, okay? So we took took strips of Plastigage and we laid them across here in various areas. And I did this a couple of different ways to make sure that I didn't screw up the results. We bolted a neck on to the proper torque. Now here's the interesting thing. No matter what you Google, you can't really find a consistent torque number for what these bolts are supposed to be, okay? Basically, good and tight is the torque standard. At Fender, they just use a little power drill with a clutch on it, and it's done, okay? So there's really no standard there. So, I mean, I build guitars, so I just did it how I always do it. Here's the crazy part. This little pieces of wax. These are wax that fall apart in your fingers. It's very difficult. They're very hard to handle. It squishes, and what it's supposed to do is squeeze out as we tighten down, okay, and show us the high pressure areas in the neck pocket. Do you know that no matter whichever way I did this, that wax, when the neck was torqued to my spec, it didn't even squish the wax. The wax would not squish, meaning the pressure underneath here is so low that it would not squish Plastigage wax to even test it. And I tried it like 4 different times in a couple of different arrangements, and it just would not squish. So if Plastigage wax won't squish, it won't deflect when I'm trying to test it, then a piece of cereal box is not going to deflect, okay? And it's so dense. You wouldn't think of cereal box as dense, but it is, okay? Paper cereal box is dense. So when you put it in here and shim with it, it's not going to move around. Your action's not going to move with the seasons any more than the fretboard is going to move. Any more than your neck relief is going to move. So And the only reason I did that experiment is because I know that there's going to be a lot of people that say I don't want to use a cellulose material because it's going to expand and contract, which it's just not. It's not going to enough to affect the playability of the guitar. And the other objection is we're losing pressure putting a shim in there, and now the tone is going to be gone. The bottom line is there is barely any pressure here anyway. It's just holding together. It's not torqued down to a point where, you know, when you tap down there, it's supposed to do something. It's just holding together. It's not a pressure point. Okay, it is not a tone transfer point, pressure point, like everybody thinks it is. It's just holding together. Okay, and that being said as well, the way your neck pocket is supposed to fit, a lot of people will say, well, I want it so tight in there that I got to beat it in there, and then you can hold the guitar up with no bolts and blah, blah. If this wood is different than your neck wood, you don't want that to happen, because they're going to expand and contract a little bit differently, and you can have problems in the future. So, shims are pretty controversial, and I already can tell you that there's probably going to be a lot of comments on the internet about this video. But sometimes you need them, sometimes you don't. You put some cereal box in there, you shim that baby up about 1/3 of a millimeter, readjust your saddle height, and you will find that your action, especially on your E, A, and your B and your E, will be lower. Depending on the neck radius that you have and the rest of your guitar setup, the guitar will play flatter, it will play better, and you will not be able to tell a difference in tone lost just because you put a shim in it. My name is Dylan. This is Dylan Talks Tone, and we will talk to you next time.